Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Well, it's the holiday season again and I wanted to do a quick video showing how my family has used a living Christmas tree for the past 6 or 7 years. Now, I know it's a little hard to see in this video right now, but this is actually a living tree that's inside a pot that we drag into the house each year and then replant it in the garden at the end of each season. We've loved it from an environmental and economical perspective, and I wanted to just share some of my thoughts on the logistics of caring for a living Christmas tree in case you're interested in trying it out. So with that being said, let's back up a bit and I'll show you how we keep the tree planted in the garden for most of the year. Alright, so step one is just to dig it up out of the ground. So I just bury it here in a hole in my back garden, and you can see I don't even bury it that deep. And like I said, this is what we do every year. I mean, it's been 6 years since we bought the tree and this seems to work great. So all I got to do is just dig this out a little bit and pull up the pot. Alright, so as you can see, it comes out pretty easily, especially since I don't bury the entire pot, just about a foot down. And now all we gotta do is, you might want to grab some help. These things are pretty darn heavy, but I'm just gonna grab and chuck this thing onto the hand truck. There! It's that easy. So now let's just drag this up to the front yard and we'll take some next steps. Alright, so the next step is I've got it out here, and as you can see, after digging it up out of the ground, the exterior of the pot is actually pretty nasty and muddy, so I don't want to bring that inside the house, so I'm just going to grab my trusty old garden hose and I'm just going to rinse it off a little bit and clean up the sides and get the dirt off. Alright, so we've all seen Christmas Vacation, and I'm sure you know what can happen if you bring in trees directly into your house. So I'm going to give this guy a good shake just to get some of the dead leaves and squirrels hopefully out of it. And also I'm just going to blast it a little bit with this leaf blower from a good distance away to kind of clear out any of the debris that might be in the branches before I bring it inside. Alright, so now that we've got the tree all cleaned up, I've gone ahead and placed it on my front deck, which is covered and slightly protected. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let him hang out with Rudolph for a couple of days just to get slightly more acclimated after getting pulled out of the ground and cleaned off and all that kind of good stuff. So we'll come back here in maybe 2 or 3 days and think about moving the tree into the house. Alright, so here's where we typically stick the tree every year, is right here in this corner. I just wanted to show you, you gotta do a little bit of prep work before you bring the tree inside the house. Namely, in this situation, notice we've got a heat register, a heat vent and duct right here. So you don't want the tree to get too warm. So actually, before I set the tree up in this corner, what I'm gonna do is actually let's block up this vent so that we don't have warm air blasting out all winter on the tree. So I'm just going to jam a towel into the vent like that. Okay, there we go. So now we can stick it near this heat register, and yeah, it won't warm up too much. Okay, so now let's think about dragging the tree inside the house.
So dragging it into the house is actually pretty easy. I just put some cardboard down so the plastic tray doesn't scratch up the floor. Plop the tree down on the cardboard and then drag the entire assembly to the location where we want to set it up.
Alright, so I've dragged the entire Christmas tree and pot into the house. Now, instead of having a normal Christmas tree stand, which just grabs the trunk, obviously you can't do that with a giant pot. So one thing you're going to want to do is get yourself a good plastic bucket. That's what I kind of use here. It's this plastic tray slash bucket, and I just sit the entire pot inside of this plastic tray so that whenever we water it, it will just come down and the water will get caught in this this large plastic tray. While we're talking about watering, let me show you a little trick. One thing that we do is to water the tree is I actually just throw a bunch of ice cubes inside. So that also obviously gives you hydration, but it also keeps the root ball a little bit cooler, maybe a little bit more acclimated to what it's used to being outdoors. Okay, so now, as you can see, this isn't the prettiest thing in the world. You got this giant black plastic tub and this giant plastic tray, but watch this. You throw a Christmas tree skirt around this and it'll look great. See, with the Christmas tree skirt on this, you can barely even tell that this is a living tree, and that pot is very well hidden. So here's what it looks like, right? I think it's looking pretty great, not too shabby. So let's talk over some of the technical data and details. When we first bought the tree, the nursery told us, and I read a lot online, that you're really not supposed to keep it indoors for more than 2 weeks at a time. And the first year we had the tree, we really babied it and only kept it indoors for 10 days. And I know what you're thinking, right? 10 days is not a lot of time, and there's a lot of overhead needed for bringing this in, getting it all, setting it up, bringing it back outside, and just for 10 days of enjoyment. So that's what I was thinking, and I said in subsequent years, we're like, forget that. We got a little bit bolder, and as you can see from this data, in a lot of the subsequent years, we've kept the tree indoors and inside for, you know, anywhere between 30 and 40 days at a time. And as you can see, it's been doing great. In fact, we actually need to trim it every few years because it's still growing, even though it's constrained in the pot. It's not growing a ton, but yeah, probably every 2 or 3 years, I've got to trim a couple inches off the top or take off a branch or something like that. And really, that's the only maintenance. When it's outside, this thing has zero maintenance during the off season. I literally just bury it in the garden, and then I don't even think about it until it's time to dig it up again the next year. Now, this isn't without drawbacks, right? So some of the drawbacks, one, I guess, primarily is there's a somewhat larger upfront investment. We spent about $90 for this smaller tree. If you're getting larger living trees, they can just go up and up. But $90 was definitely more than needing to buy it at a lot for 1 year, but that savings compounds year after year after year. So right now, I think we're on year number 7, right? And I think if you work that out, we spent now on average only $13 a year on trees. Now, if we had gone to the store, you know, and tried to buy a brand new tree every year, you know, I think those are probably on the order of $60 a pop. That's what I'm using for my baseline calculation. So right now, you can see that right now we've saved over $300 with no end in sight. And furthermore, almost more importantly, the thing that I like the most is the environmental perspective, though, right? We are not cutting down a tree every single year. I get to use this tree every single year, so I'm saving 7 trees from being chopped down, and I get the pleasure of keeping this one living and alive, again, almost indefinitely, it looks like, at this rate. What else are the drawbacks? Oh, I guess one other major drawback is obviously it doesn't look as pretty as a store-bought tree that you'd get from a lot, right? It's not perfect and triangular. You know, in fact, it sort of looks a little bit like something Charlie Brown would have picked out. But you know, what I think is after we get done decorating it, I think it looks a little bit, it actually looks pretty darn good, and I think it actually adds a little bit of charm in the fact that it is kind of ugly. So that being said, I think that's all I wanted to share with everyone. It's not that complicated, right? It's just it's a Christmas tree in a pot that you get to use over and over and over. I've really liked it, and I hope you'll consider doing it as well. So with that being said, I think this is probably a great spot to leave it. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if so, I also hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel. Surprisingly, if you just scroll a little ways down and click on that subscribe button, it really does help me continue making these videos. And remember, speaking of the videos, the new ones come out every Monday, so I hope you'll join me at one of these future discussions and we can all learn something together. So until then, I think I'll sign off for now. Talk to you later. Bye.